Hello everyone, you are coming to me live here in Lincoln Park Square in central London. So if you are around the area, please come Lincoln Park Square, central London, where crowds are gathering behind me, around me, trying to build on this momentum from COP26 and get action happening faster on the climate crisis and get proper commitments in place that can really change the future and the current living circumstances, situations for people right now. If you're joining me, thanks for joining me. My name's Alice, and at the moment behind me I'm standing in front of a very poignant sign saying Code Red for Humanity, Glasgow to COP. Now, why are we doing this from London? Well, unfortunately, a lot of people have not been able to go to COP. COP, by the way, is a conference of the parties. It's where 197 nations and territories meet every year to monitor and review the implementation of the UN framework on Convention of Climate Change. And this is a really, really key thing. COP26 in particular is a big event where if we don't keep or maintain and build proper commitments, then really that Code Red for Humanity is being ignored, and it is super, super, super important that we don't do that. So if you're watching today, thank you for joining. I'm going to try and make, or we are all here today, going to try and make this as inclusive as possible. And so please, if you can, watching this, share this video with at least 5 people that are either part of the movement, that aren't. It's not about that, it's about getting action happening. And today, my job and the job of everybody else here is to show you some of the people that are here, hear from the people in the crowd, try and get away from statistics, which are, yes, terrifying, but there's more than statistics here. This is the human story behind the climate crisis, and we're trying to showcase that today from here in London. Some people here will have come from COP, some people haven't. And as I said, behind me there's a group of people with a sign saying Code Red for Humanity. I'm going to turn round this camera now so that you can see this a bit closer. And I'm going to see if I can talk to anyone. Is there anyone here who would be comfortable chatting to me about why you're here? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, great. Now you're holding a sign there that says another COP closer to extinction. And then on the back it says 1.5 to stay alive. Now, why are you here today? Could you introduce yourself first?
Okay, I'm Claire Jenkins. I've come today from Hereford with a group of other rebels from Hereford. And I feel it's important to march to Westminster today because the government had a real chance to show real, genuine climate leadership. And instead what they've given us is another lot of greenwash. And so although useful things have been achieved at the COP, it's very disappointing, and it's really no thanks to our present government.
Now, I really want to touch on what I think is important we do today, and that is get through and past all the jargon that we see in these spaces, and makes it hard for some people who are new to these spaces to understand what's going on. The climate crisis is a little bit unsexy in some ways because a lot of the words that are being used, a lot of the terms from greenwashing to COP26 in itself, are difficult barriers for people to really get through. It's not easy to understand what those things mean. Could you explain, therefore, what greenwashing means and why it's important we know about it?
Greenwashing, as I understand it, is when people talk in a way that suggests that they're doing very much more to help the environment than they actually do. And I think Boris Johnson's been doing a great deal of that recently. He sounds very impressive, but if you look at the actions behind it, they're really not at all so impressive.
And I appreciate that the problem is bigger than this, but taking a flight back from COP is something that I think we can all get on board with. It's absolutely ludicrous. To make it to a dinner party, I believe, is what the reason for that was, which is madness. If you could speak to anybody at COP who is a deciding person, who is a decision maker, what would you say to them?
I think the banner says it, 1.5 to stay alive, and we've absolutely got to do that because it is life and death. It's life and death for a lot of people in other parts of the world now, and it's coming to us too, sadly soon.
Absolutely. Now, there'll be some people who are a bit nervous about joining in protests like this. Is there anything you'd say to them?
Yes, we're not all anarchist crusties. There are people from all ages, all walks of life, and most of us are actually quite respectable.
Sorry, move it out of the way. Sorry. Yes.
And it's actually a very friendly atmosphere as well. I've been to other actions by myself and always felt completely safe and supported by other people.
Thank you very much for talking to me. Thank you. And as you said, we are many different people here, many different faces, with one clear goal, and that is to make humanity possible on this planet that we're in right now, following the code red for humanity and beyond that has been said by scientists, by Indigenous peoples. And in and amongst us here today, I'm going to try and interview and speak to a few people who are behind some of that messaging. Now, as you can see, there's a few people in front of me holding signs that say they are killing us. This is very, very true. I think sometimes that can be hard to envisage when we don't see that in our current life, maybe here in the UK, where we're able to live our life fairly normally. But the reality is that this comfort is short-lived and is certainly not the case for many people right now, and definitely not for many of us in the future. So I'm going to move forward and see if I can speak to a few people. This is one of those people here. Hi.
Hi.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Bhavini Patel from Extinction Rebellion in sunny London.
Fantastic. And have you been to COP26?
I have been over to COP26. I was there all of last week, and for the Global March and the Justice March.
Okay. So there'll be some people here who are thinking, well, you must be filled with hope then. And there'll be others who definitely don't agree with that. Where do you sit, having experienced it firsthand?
It's a greenwash, and we really need to call it out. This is the 26th COP, and we've had no significant changes. The one in particular is no more fossil fuel extraction. That is not on the table. That has not been signed up to, and we're heading over the cliff if we don't stop the fossil fuel industry.
No, I'm so pleased you're talking about the present day, because it is quite easy to talk about the history and get frustrated because, it is valid. The first person to suggest that climate change would be an issue was Alexander von Humboldt about 200 years ago. Then about 30 years ago, we know proper climate panels were being built and reports were being made in big oil and gas industries. To think that our governments didn't know about that is just a bit silly. So knowing that there's all this historical record of inaction, how much hope do you have in action, proper action, proportionate action happening?
I have hope in the people. I don't have hope in the governments because they are doing the bidding for corporations. I have hope in the people. That's where the hope is, and that's where the change can lie. Because when people get together and they mobilize and hold governments to account who have been systematically propping up corporations for profit for themselves and the big corporates. And we need to break that monopoly that's going on in this dialogue of meeting the needs of what the climate demands from us now.
That's a really big statement, and I agree with you, but that feels like such a big task. What is a route forward for anyone who's watching this and wondering what to do?
What I say, no matter how big or small, get active and get connected. Because when we get active, we get connected, and the more connections we make, the larger we can make the movement. And everybody plays a role, from providing coffees, if that's what you like doing, or baking cakes or whatever, because you have to be in each other's spaces to build that connection, to build those trust networks, because that is what's going to keep us resilient when our governments and corporations are ignoring us. Because once we find that resiliency in the communities and across the country, we will be more powerful than corporates and governments.
Now, speaking of corporates and governments, these are people with really big power. And I wondered if we could talk about that for a moment, because for some people watching this, and for many people in different parts of the world, they really won't be feeling the impact of the climate crisis right now. They're able to ignore it somewhat. But the reality for a lot of people, some in the UK, but a lot at the time, unfortunately, the global south is a prime target of the climate crisis, even though they have the least to do in most cases with propagating the problem. How do you feel like we can conceptualize the true tragic trauma and reality of the climate crisis?
I've actually got a beautiful young activist from South Africa here. She came over to COP, and I think we should let her kind of really address that. But for me, the climate change is not in the future, it's right now. And it has been impacting for 30 plus years in the global south, and we cannot avoid any points. You know, they talk about 1.5, forget it. Even the plan they've got today does not get us to 1.5. Let's dump this notion of working towards a target. The target is no extra points, full stop, because every point makes a huge difference to the people in Global South. We're talking about billions of people being displaced.
And where do they go?
Exactly.
If you're watching this, I think something that's really missed out in the conversation about the climate crisis is the migration crisis.
Yeah.
When you have an inhospitable place to live, you're going to move somewhere else.
Yeah, if we don't want to see, seriously, in this country, if we truly don't want to see more people on our borders and more of these tragic stories that we see from the seas and oceans, then let's make their home safe and resilient and habitable. Then people don't want to come here. It's bloody cold.
But it is for now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go a bit closer into the crowd of people here. And I've got a wonderful young activist here. I've timed this poorly, I think, as she's in the middle of a conversation. Here we go. Hello. I was hoping you'd be able to talk to me for a moment. If you could introduce yourself first, that would be wonderful.
My name is Reesa Nur Mohammed, and I am 19 years old, and I'm from South Africa.
Oh my goodness. There's so many things in one that I'd love to chat to you about. I'm just going to go around this way, though, so that we can see everything going on in the background. Because if you are just joining us, we are in Lincoln Square Park, and there is a big protest group moving. So if you are in the area, please do come and join. Now, back to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, you're all the way from South Africa. It's quite a long way to come to talk about the climate crisis. Why did you feel like this was imperative for you to be here?
I feel like, well, because I came for COP26, and I feel like it's so important for people, especially youth from the Global South, to be there, because COP is, by design, it's so exclusionary. And even though we are excluded, and we're excluded from the decision-making processes, we're excluded from the discussions, we were there to make our voices heard. And also there's no other chance for all of us to meet, like everyone from the Global South to come together and really, really like stand together. So it's so important. It was important for us to be there and make that stand and make those connections.
Do you feel like you were able to make those connections, and do you feel hopeful as a result of that?
Well, I was able to make the connections with the other youth, the other young people, but the actual COP was terrible. It was so exclusive. Like, I thought the exclusionary part was the fact that people can't get here in the first place. But I got here and I still couldn't enter any of the decisions. Like, I had a badge and I couldn't enter any of the important things. And like, it's not even that I wasn't involved in the discussions. It was like, I couldn't witness it either. And so COP sucked, but the youth gave me hope.
And also being able to use social media platforms like this to amplify voices is so, so important. On that, you are from an area in the Global South. This is particularly pertinent for anybody watching who isn't aware. I think it's something ridiculous, like 90% of all deaths due to extreme weather conditions are deaths from people in the Global South. This disproportionately, massively affects people in the Global South. But you're here to, really flag that is a problem. There will be some people who feel like they can close their eyes at the moment to what is happening, because right now in the UK, yes, we absolutely do, if you're paying attention, have crop shortages. Warside Farm is a great place to look if you're learning about that, if you're learning about crop insecurity and how impactful that will be. But from somebody who is experiencing it firsthand, do you have anything to say to those people who perhaps aren't really sympathetic at the moment, or as sympathetic as they could do, or aren't doing what they really could to make change happen, because for them perhaps it isn't a reality at the moment?
I feel like it's such a privilege to be able to not care or to be able to close your eyes, because that means that you don't have to. It's for so many people, especially from the Global South. Like, they don't even have the privilege to be activists, because there's so many other things in their lives that they have to worry about. And one thing that I do, what I think needs to be said is listen. Like, if you're important enough to be part of the decision-making processes, chances are you're not listening, because at COP, no one who was important was there. All the important people were back at home, although important people are the ones who are going to be the most affected by the climate crisis, which is rooted in colonization. And so listen and act, and don't wait for the Global South to come to you and make you do anything. you have the if you have the resources to have this massive conference, you have the resources to go to the global south and give people the resources and the funding to be able to make change within their own communities, because who better to know what changes to make than the people who live in those communities? Grassroots.
Oh yeah. Now my last question is really about what you think is missing from the COP conversation. Is there anything that you feel is missing?
The people. There's so much missing from the conversation because the people doing the conversation are they're not even the people who should be in the conversation aren't even part of it. So I feel but also the acknowledgement that the climate crisis is a very it's rooted in colonization. That isn't discussed enough, and the fact that the global south is so disproportionately affected because of the injustices of the past, because they were not given reparations. They're still recovering from colonization. So I feel like that is something that really needs to be addressed. Reparations.
Yeah, completely. And a lot of people won't know what that means, but please, if you don't know what that means, look it up. It's worthwhile knowing about. Now, I want to get away from the idea of statistics at this point, because it is easy to talk about statistics and not put a face and a human story to this.
Yes.
So you are a human person who has come all the way from a country that is really heavily affected by this right now. Could you tell me a bit about that? Tell me a bit about you.
So, before I came and while I was here, I was saying that I'm not here representing South Africa. I'm not representing youth. I'm not representing South African youth. I'm representing me. I'm Ray, and only Ray, because I have not lived anyone else's life. How could I possibly claim to represent them? That would be stealing their voice. And coming here, it was more to bring awareness to that, highlight that, not just say, look at me, I'm representing my country. It's why are they not here to represent themselves? Why are you not listening to people? Because being an on-the-ground activist, and then looking at these discussions, and even being in university, looking at the research done, all these discussions and these reports, they make people into statistics. And when you're on the ground, it's so much more than that. And I feel like because they're not on the ground, it's so much it's so much easier for them, and they are much more complacent and happy to be complacent because they are happy to not see people as people. But when you're on the ground, when you see people as people, you realize in all these discussions and the decisions they make, it's about let's see how we can get humanity to survive without doing as little as possible. And it's about it's about leaving nobody behind. It's not about, okay, cool, this many less people died this year, or this many less people got sick this year. It's no, what about all those people who did? All of them count, all of them matter. People are people, they're all human, they all have a story, they're all individuals, and no one deserves to be left behind. Everyone should be part of the change.
Couldn't agree more, completely. Thank you very much for speaking to me. I also want to point out that you are a youth activist and part of the youth climate groups that have been making huge strides in getting attention on this matter. So thank you very much for doing that. The sights in Glasgow with those huge marches are really quite phenomenal to see. So thank you. And if you're watching this, yes, it's wonderful what Ray's doing, but I think she'd probably appreciate it better if we all got involved as well, more than just chatted about it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now I'm going to go into the Samba band a little bit and see if I can talk to another person, another youth actually. I'm going to next. Thank you very much, Ray. Have a lovely protest. I'll see you later. Okay, now over here, I've spoken to this lady beforehand, so I've checked to make sure that this is okay for me to chat to her. Hello. Hello. Now, if you could introduce yourself, we just went and spoke to Ray, who is a youth activist who's just come from South Africa to be part of the COP conversations, and she's talking about how in being part of the global south is more than a statistic, and she needs to be recognised for that. Now we've gone from one youth, she's 19, to a very different youth. A lot. 1.5. Wow. Hello. Now this is Saska, I believe, isn't it?
Saska. Good memory.
Yeah, good memory. But if you could introduce yourself, that would be really wonderful.
Sure. Yes, I'm Lucy Taylor. What else do you need to know? I'm 39, if that makes a difference. And this is my daughter Saska, who's 1.5.
Oh, lovely. Now Saska, I'm sure probably won't be able to tell me why she's here today.
I mean, mostly because her mouth's full of an orange. But,
yeah.
also, yeah, I'm not sure she can be as articulate as you would need. I'm not sure I could be either, but why are we here? Why isn't everyone here, quite frankly? This is, gosh, I don't know actually what number march or action this is that we've been on, but obvious reasons really. It's just super important to get our point across. Extinction Rebellion's point, but also obviously, particularly this march is all about the COP meetings, which have been disappointment to anyone who really cares about things actually being done and things actually changing. Just disappointing, hugely disappointing. So much more being said than done, as ever. And that's why we're here to, I guess, reassert our point and show everyone how disappointed we are. And I think continue to encourage people to do something about it rather than just say that they can. The thing that always sticks in my mind is principle's not a principle till it costs you something. Everyone's too focused on convenience at the moment. And looking good, and sometimes you've got to do something that makes you feel uncomfortable or changes the way in which you live, or isn't convenient.
Now, to speak about that, really, it is quite clear here. This is not convenient. Walking around in a protest with a little tiny child. In some of the other protests I've seen, the parents really are struggling to keep their kids with them in these spaces. Like, they really want to get them involved because it's important. But to say that it's an easy decision for someone like you to come out here, yes, it's easier than some people. There is huge privilege to talk about there. But more so than that, we need to give the youth a voice, and also parents. Is it a scary time to be a parent?
It's a very scary time to be a parent. It's not a scary decision to come on one of these marches. It's not inconvenient to come on this march. It's incredibly important. There was no question about whether we were going to come or not. And it's not scary, it's lovely. There are lots of kids of all ages that come along, and it's rather lovely to see them all here.
It's a bit hopeful, I suppose, isn't it?
It's really hopeful. These are I don't think joyful, but certainly sort of positive, or as much as can be. I get the positivity comes from people coming together in something that they believe in. That's what's really nice about it. The inclusivity, not just about age, but gender, race, all the stuff. Like, whoever you are welcome here if you believe in what we are trying to sort of talk about. So not a scary place, lovely. And the exile families do loads of, they bring along sort of activities specifically for kids of all ages. So yeah, not a difficult decision to come.
Oh, that's really good to hear, actually. Thank you for correcting.
It's hard to be a parent at the moment. It was a big decision of mine. I was very aware going through the process. Saskia is a donor baby, so I very consciously had her as a single person. I just wanted to have a baby, and not a straightforward decision in this day and age, but important. It was important for me, and I just have to focus on the hope, and the hope that she can be part of the solution in some way.
Now, talking about solution is pretty pertinent now, because we're going to go to the speeches in a moment. There's some people on microphones, but I think it's really important to insert hope here, because you as a parent probably much more informed in some ways than some people might be, if it's not affecting, if they don't have children with a future that they really want to protect. To say that I want to get away from this future talk to some degree, because this is happening right now, and it's affecting everybody right now, some more acutely than others. But there are so many solutions out there. There's so many books that have been written on this. People over this week have been shouting about the solutions loud and clear. Yeah. Project Drawdown's a great place to start. If you're looking at some of those solutions, there's other places as well. Yeah. Loads. Please, if you're watching this, put some in the comments for people to look at. But to what extent do you feel, how do you feel about knowing how many solutions there are out there, but knowing that right now, what has been seen as the last hope for humanity, I suppose, COP26, those solutions aren't being put into action as fervently as they as they should be?
I think the tricky thing is what we're fighting against is convenience. So people have got too used to a life of convenience, whether it's about how you take your holidays, how you travel to work, what you do for work, what you eat, what you do in your spare time, how you shop, all of those things. We've become too used to convenience, doing what we want, when we want, getting things immediately, and I think that's difficult. So I think getting people to change their behaviour is hard. So yes, people can do their bit to, eat a different kind of diet or recycling. I know it's a small fry, but I guess it's something. Travel less, stop flying, all of these sorts of things. But it's hard, This is not as many people as there should be here, and that's because it is inconvenient. And we've got used to living lifestyles of convenience. So there's only ever going to be a limit to what an individual will do, and that's why I think we need policy change. We need governments to think about, how we use fossil fuels differently, how we, all the stuff that they can influence to make them, enforce change, I suppose. That sounds a bit heavy-handed, but I think it has to be, because otherwise people won't be incentivized to change their behaviour. They won't feel like they have to. Ridiculous things like flights being cheaper than travelling by train. All sorts of things like that are just it's mad. It's mad. Of course, no one's going to take a flight if they can. Not going to take a train if they can fly for less than half the price. So it's stuff like that which needs to be changed at a more policy level, I guess.
Now, thank you so much for talking to me. Gail Bradbrook, I believe, is about to speak, so we're going to nip over to that. No, absolutely not. Thank you so much. A very empowering lady to another. Thank you very much for speaking to me. Goodbye, Saska. I'll see you later. See ya. Me too. So now we're going to go.
Feel their pain and then come to the streets and show them the beautiful magic and rage and love that you can offer. And let's remember this. To be hopeful, you have to be active. And I see a lot of hope here. So let's be active, let's be hopeful, let's make some noise! Extinction! 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 Woo, you beautiful beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavini! So, we are joining the Lord's Mayor show today. There are two mayors in London, the Lord Mayor and the Mayor of London. And historically, the City of London was set up to challenge the power of royalty. It has actually quite honourable roots in some ways. But as you well know, Britain never stopped its imperialist colonial advances. It just merely shifted into tax havenry. And it turns out that, Geoffrey Cox is one of the most well-paid MPs in the UK, is doing a nice sideline on being a barrister for these tax havens. The City of London, is the 15% of the funding for fossil fuels comes from the city. But more than that, it is the global centre of corruption in the world, the City of London. So we have a network of secrecy jurisdictions across the world whose job it is to extract wealth from so-called developing countries. They are being underdeveloped by this extraction ongoing. There's a global rip-off organised by the City of London. So if you add up the City of London plus all the spider networks of, the Bahamas, British Virgin Islands, our Crown dependencies, territories, they all work as a network to extract wealth from other countries, and then they're using that, it's pushing up house prices in the UK. This is an issue of inequality fundamentally, and it's an issue of a political economy that is domination based, that's designed to extract wealth for a very few percent. Like the top 1% of the world do 15% of the emissions. This is a system that is designed, as you well know, it's designed, and we are told that we have to protect our economy. No, we do not. Our economy needs to protect us. It's very simple. We have an economic system that is designed to carry on growing on a finite planet. And there's like conversations about whether you can have some form of growth. Sure, you can have growth in well-being. We can measure other ways of growing. But while politicians, business people, bankers, the Lord Mayor of London, who gets, they have this remembrancer in Parliament, they get a special position in Parliament, the city. There's no remembrancer for future generations. There's no remembrancer for the environment. There's no remembrancer for our family in the global south. There's a remembrancer in Parliament for the issues and wants of the city, there to stop any change. They're at the heart of the problem, the City of London. And we're going to march on them, folks. And we're inviting the Lord Mayor, because this is a time when we need defection. We need defection from the business leaders, from the bankers. You know, Mark Carney just said that he's part of Greta Thunberg's movement. I mean, you know, I do believe that there are some people who call themselves capitalists that are trying from the inside to make change. I mean, you may remember that we had some funding from Chris Hone, who is he's a hedge fund guy, and he funds the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, and they are the biggest funders of climate action outside of America, right? So you do have some business leaders that know this is not okay. And what he's just done is to work as an activist investor and pull out of Heathrow. So there are some people on the inside, right? And the reason I mention that is because there's always divide and rule happening. Always. This is a systemic issue. The system has to change. And there are people within that system who are starting to stand up and name that the system is corrupt and toxic and has to change. So there's just a letter that's gone out called Leaders for Global Assemblies. Leaders for Global Assemblies. And it's business leaders that are saying, including the former global head of tax from KPMG, Bevis from Triodos Bank in the UK, saying that this system is failing, is failed, it's got failure baked in, and that we have to have systemic change, and that has to be led by people. And we've just had a global assembly for the very first time during the COP, which was 100 citizens chosen at random from around the world using GPS satellite tracking. I mean, an amazing undertaking from the people that try to organise that. It's democracy 3.0, folks. It's birthing now. It's birthing now. And that was something that an initiative that started here in the UK. It's never perfect, these things. How do you start democracy 3.0 from a place of not democracy? That's the closest thing. That's a starting effort. It's going to come from the people, but it's also going to come from some surprising places. So let's always have a hand of friendship reached out to the people that seem to be propping up this toxic system, whilst naming what it is and whilst demanding change. So onwards, folks, let's go to the City of London. Extinction! Extinction! Extinction!
Thanks very much. Before we go, we've got a speaker from the anti-capitalist newspaper, Fighting Racism, Fighting Imperialism, the newspaper of the Revolutionary Communist Group.
Thank you. Yeah, as we announced at the beginning, this is an open megaphone. If any other organisations that support this movement and this march want to speak, you can find us on the march. I understand that we need to move off quickly as well. I just want to briefly say, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism is supporting the cause for the environment because we recognise that the future of the whole of humanity is in the hands of the most oppressed people in the world. The working class and oppressed peoples internationally must lead the fight for the future of our ecosystems. And our movements here in Britain, as was stated very clearly, we need to join in an alliance with all of the most oppressed people who are struggling and fighting back against imperialism, whether it's the British multinational companies and banks that are looting and plundering the resources of the underdeveloped world, the hundreds of companies that are based in the City of London that have control of the resources of African nations which are wealthy but whose wealth is being stolen by capitalists based and hosted here in this city. We support the struggle of people, whether it's in Peru, whether it's in Bolivia, West Papua, whether it's the people of Palestine, whether it's the people of Cuba, people of Bolivia who are fighting back to try and take back control of their national resources from British multinationals and banks. We name the system that is driving us towards extinction. It is capitalism. It is capitalism, and we must look for an alternative. And the struggle for a different world will be led by the most oppressed people in alliance with the working class. So, if you're interested in what we have to say, if you want to join our anti-imperialist contingent on the march, this is our banner, and you can come and march with us. We support the fight for a better world. Another world is not only possible, it is necessary. Thank you.
Extinction! Extinction! We are very behind. So we need to walk quite quickly now. We're going to start marching quickly. Please get your energy up. Talk to people around you. Educate yourselves about why we're here. Let's go. Extinction! Extinction!
Movement.
Do we have sound there?
So hello, good morning everybody. My name's Etienne, I'm a rebel from Nottingham. We're here at Lincoln's Inn Fields. We're just moving off, the march has started and it's been really cool. We've heard from all sorts of different speakers. We heard from Gail Bradbrook and Bovini, talking about why the City of London is really important as a potential to play a really important role in decarbonising our economy and getting towards a safe future for us all. 15% of the world's fossil fuel funding comes through the City of London. So if the City of London was a country, it would be the 9th biggest emitter in the world. So it's got a serious amount of carbon going through, being supported by the City of London. So we're here to demand, that the City of London stop new investments in fossil fuels. There's already more than enough in existing oil wells, coal fields, and gas fields to bring us way above the 1.5 degree limit that Paris Agreement says is sensible, fair and safe for those around the world. Already they're struggling, they're already suffering and having bad times. But if it goes above 1.5 degrees, these countries are going to cease to exist. So we are basically here to say, COP26 isn't working. It's looking like a complete show of greenwash and nonsense. And we now are demanding that people step up. We're demanding that other groups, other institutions start to step up their own efforts. They know what's right, they know what's good. They can have their own leadership and take a step into their own responsibility, and actually we can get this on. So the City of London's got a role to play here, and we're on our way there now to make sure our voices are heard, because without them, they've got a huge potential to make a difference here. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting day. As usual, it's Extinction Rebellion. We're all together as a whole bunch of amazing people, lovely, kind people who have heard about the climate emergency, who know and understand, the real implications of this, the terrifying implications of this. And once you've heard that, you start to feel this kind of call.
Hi everyone, we're here outside the Bank of England. It appears some of the marchers pulled out a banner saying COP has failed, I believe. And the police have moved in. You can see some Extinction Rebellion flags. A lot of shocked people.
It's a tower on the corner, isn't it? You just drop them in there. Yeah. They're not making the points, are they?
So hello, if you're just joining us, we're just down at Bank, outside the Bank of England, and It appears some of the people on the march today have pulled out a banner saying "COP has failed." I can now see some Extinction Rebellion flags. And the police have moved in their masses and looks like they've blocked the road. We've seen everyone marching past. The Lord Mayor is just over to my left-hand side. Lots of armed police around here, as you can imagine. So whoever's taking this action today is very brave indeed.
See that? Not only did they kill police, they had the army there as well.
So looks like one of the vehicles has been moved over to the side of the road now. So it looks like they've managed to move the vehicle out of the way and allow the parade to continue. We've seen lots of greenwash on this march, as you can imagine. One up there from the Bank of England. Good view of the
Hey, hello everybody, we're headed down along the road, we're just heading to Arch. The Lord Mayor's here. We're here basically to demand an immediate fossil fuel investment. We are in a climate and ecological emergency. It makes absolutely no sense to be getting new fossil fuels out of the ground. We need to leave them in the ground. This is something really simple our government could do basically or Monday when it gets home from COP26. We can get on that straight away. We don't need the permission of all the countries around the world to do the right thing, to do a sensible thing for our children, for our children's future. So to me it makes complete sense and we've got to act now. It's an emergency. We're calling on her watch what's going on at COP26 and thinking this is hopeless, this is a sham, this is greenwash, this is nonsense. We need to act now and we're calling on people to come out, join Extinction Rebellion, make your voices heard, gather together, make sure people know what's going on, that there is an emergency, our governments are letting us down, and we need to basically make sure our voices are heard. I believe right now, more people in this country know that we're in an emergency, and they know that our government isn't doing enough. And how are we going to make sure they do more? We have to make sure our voices are heard. So we're now at the scene of this procession here. Looks like there's all sorts of military kind of equipment and soldiers and personnel walking past. And we seem to be heading off down in this direction here. So we're cruising on here. Let's keep going. So it's really interesting now. It looks like an interesting kind of situation. There was an action just last week in Malvern, in the West Midlands, to bring attention to the fact that the military emissions from war and the military industry, these emissions are not counted in our carbon accounting. So basically we need to make sure that everybody knows what's in and what's not, because at the moment a lot of accounting is not very sensible. They're always finding loopholes, trying to find little ways to squirrel out of their obligations. It's really impossible to know basically where all these emissions are coming from, because countries are not being honest. Our government itself is trying to hide behind the idea that our emissions are dropping, when in fact most of our emissions are being offshore to China. So China's producing a lot of our stuff, and their carbon emissions count that. So when we say our emissions are dropping, actually we've just given them to China to produce. So this is an example now. We're trying to say, you know, we need really rapid drops in carbon emissions, and we really need people to know that our government is failing us, that greenwashing now is basically the new form. It's no longer, we're not talking about denial, we're talking about delay and greenwash. And this is all about basically trying to make you feel calm, feel reassured that actually they've got control of this, when in fact it's really the opposite. We're headed towards a 2.4 degrees world.
Our streets! Our streets! Our streets! Our streets!
And so this is exactly it, you know, these are our streets. This is democracy in action now. Extinction Rebellion is making sure the voices of ordinary people are being heard by our leaders. We're really inviting anybody. We're really inviting anybody from the UK, from around the world, to rise up in rebellion, to join the rebellion. There's people all around the world on the front lines, in the indigenous peoples, earth defenders, earth protectors all around the world are dying right now to protect our forests, to protect our rivers and trees. And in fact now it's almost like I personally, this is my personal view here, it's the least we can do now to back them up and try and stand up and make sure our voices are heard, because to be honest, we're in such big trouble. If we don't stand up now, things are going to go so much worse. And I just think personally it's time for me, and I'm inviting everyone else to come and join us. We need you. You know, we can make a difference. There'd actually be no chance that COP26 would have had the pressure exerted upon it if it wasn't for groups like Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future, Greta Thunberg, and all the other different methods that involve getting out on the streets, being a bit annoying, being a little bit disruptive, to try and make sure that our voices get into the news, get into the public consciousness. I wish it didn't really come to this. You know, I wish we could just stay at home and send petitions and things, but these petitions are being ignored for far, far, far too long. So we're really going to push hard. We've got to try and get out there, stand up, and make sure that we are being heard, because right now, the future of our civilization is hanging in the balance. COP26 is supposed to decide, you know, which way we're going. Are we going to intensify this crisis, or are we going to try and send up to a different way of doing things, a world where we can actually live in happiness, in health, in a sort of comfort that right now we think we get from all the stuff that we buy and all of those things. But in fact, real joy and real happiness comes from being together with other people, caring for each other, looking after each other. And at the moment, we're not heading in that direction. We're heading to a world that's going to consume more and more resources, and eventually is going to collapse. And we're seeing this, you know, signs of this collapse all around the world. We've seen the floods and we've seen the fires. We're hearing about the extinctions of, you know, of all the natural world, loads of different plants. These are facing some epic problems here, and we really need to make sure that we get our voices out there, because this just isn't sensible. You know, lots of people, I believe, actually know. It's interesting here. Lots of people seem to be booing us. And I just saw a man turning water. This guy over here, he just poured water all over that man there in some sort of gesture. And so some people are saying, you know, this is a shameful thing. But actually, I think it's completely sensible. What is more sensible? What is a more braver, more responsible thing to do than to stand up and save the planet for us and all the future generations, all the young people who can't have their voices heard, all of the young people who are basically going to be burdened with a burning planet, with a collapsing ecosystem. It's just not fair. It's just not right. And also all around the world right now, you know, there's people far away from us that are literally on the front lines, you know, dying, flooding, you know, they're suffering all these problems, and it just seems to me really not sensible. So right now, look, there's some marchers coming through. They've got their bayonets and all that stuff. It looks like we're actually causing a little bit of disruption to this march to try and make sure that actually people notice. And we're here to explain the City of London. Let's not forget the City of London funds about 15% of fossil fuels around the world. So 15% of the global fossil fuel funding comes to the City of London. We're demanding an immediate end to fossil fuel investments. This is something the government could do really quite quickly. So yeah, the City of London has got a role to play here. We're asking them to step up. We're asking the Lord Mayor of the City of London, a man who is presumably very, very powerful, who has influence behind the scenes and also influence in front of the scenes. They could step up at this point when COP26 is failing, when COP26 is actually not delivering. It's up to individuals, institutions, people who've got influence in these organisations who can actually make a difference here. So yeah. So it looks like there's a big truck trying to get through here. It's got, what has it got? It's got a speedboat on the back. And this is interesting really, because we've got this huge huge procession here of all these things that actually, yeah, the weapons of war coming through. But what we're here trying to say is, you know, this is a moment to call out the greed, and also to call out the fact that we need to change course. So it seems like the police have formed a bit of a cordon here. And the interesting thing is that the City of London, you know, over the years has come to kind of symbolise and celebrate the greed, the exploitation of the natural world and converting it into money. And at the moment, we're not able to continue that method. Well, there's a lot of people with guns looking very menacing here, but you've got to remember, Extinction Rebellion are peaceful protesters. We're here to make sure that the voices of the sensible people are heard. Here we go, they're waving to us now. Lots of rebels are waving at them. Oh, we've even got some snow soldiers. Don't know where they're going to be fighting their wars if the Arctic ices are all melted in the blue ice events that are predicted to be happening quite soon. So just to remind people, Extinction Rebellion are a peaceful, non-violent civil disobedience group. We use these tactics because we believe they are sensible and justified in this situation to get the changes that we need, the rapid changes that we need. And so far, the climate and ecological emergency has been known about for about 30 years, but the action has not really been following that.
It's going up in smoke.
So we're basically here to say, look, we're in an emergency situation. We need to act now. Ordinary people have been convinced that we don't have a role, that our voices cannot be heard. But actually using peaceful civil disobedience methods, the methods that were used by Martin Luther King and Gandhi, all those sorts of amazing, powerful groups that created the modern world that we live in now, that helped secure the rights that we have. These methods now are sensible, proportionate, and useful to try and tackle this climate and ecological emergency. Here we go. So these guys, we're all waving at them. We're demanding that they act now. Oh no, the worshipful company of wax chandlers. Yeah. So we're needing action at all levels. We need leadership from all sorts of institutions. We need institutions to step up. COP26 as an institution has failed us. It's already looking like it's going to deliver far, far less than we need to get us onto a safe path to keep below the 1.5 degree limit that the Paris Agreement says is both sensible and fair. Here we go. British farmers are proud to keep the nation fed with climate-friendly food. So I guess this is a really interesting discussion to be had here, because a lot of science points to the fact that industrial agriculture is fueling and intensifying the climate and ecological emergency. The damage done by farming in methods that are not in sympathy with the planet are basically serving to destroy our future. Really interesting as well the way that these industries are trying to greenwash themselves, declaring their climate friendliness with their pictures of green fields and all that sort of thing, when in fact the reality of industrial agriculture is far more grim. Creates huge amounts of suffering, huge amounts of emissions, huge amounts of damage to the water resources, to the soil and to the atmosphere. I don't know if anyone recently saw George Monbiot's amazing documentary called Riverside. It's about how the River Wye is being destroyed, being killed by effluent from the chicken farms that are leaking into the river. So let's cruise along now. We're going to try and see if we can get a better view of what's going on, because it seems like there's some quite important looking people here today. Excuse me, sorry, thank you. Can I just squeeze through here? And that's kind of the point that Extinction Rebellion are making here. Everybody has a role. Everybody has a role here, but our leaders, the people of the institutions that are at the helms of these institutions, have the power to do something. They have the power to demonstrate leadership that our government is not showing. They have the power to actually say, actually, I care about the climate, I care about the future of my family, I care about the future of my children and the children is yet unborn. And actually, we can push for action at the top of these organisations. We can actually make things happening. So we're basically saying here, it's really important that now the COP26 has been shown to be a failure, shown that it's not going to deliver the changes that we need. It's actually pretending to deliver the changes just to keep people calm, trying to keep people quiet, trying to say, oh, you know, guys, we've got this, we're going to handle this, when in fact they've got nothing of the sort. The Paris Agreement is in danger. COP26 is likely to push us over 2.4 degrees of warming, and this is a hell on earth scenario. Once we get above 2 degrees, that's the whole point of the 2 degrees limit, which is you create unsafe positive feedbacks where you can all of a sudden get the ice cap starting to melt, huge amounts of methane ice melting, and things can get really, really troublesome at that point. Because once you get more and more carbon into the atmosphere, it increases warming, increases forest fires, which increases carbon. These positive feedbacks are really terrifying, and that's what we have to try and stop. So I was just wondering, can I have a quick chat with you?
Sure, yeah.
Come on, so you just tell me what you're here for and what it's about.
It's just that desperation of, I may die in my lifetime because of climate change. It's the dire issue that being rich will save you from climate change, and they're the ones causing it because it won't affect them. And here is basically us saying, we're going to make it affect you.
Yeah, that's really cool, and I agree with, what's your name, by the way? Do you mind if I ask you?
Leo.
Leo. So Leo, you're basically saying that we have to make our voices heard because, you know, at the moment it's far too easy for people, you know, for our governments, for our leaders to ignore us, and now we've got to get out there, right?
Yeah, of course. It's the thing of, we have to make them care. We have to force them to care. Otherwise, they will just kill everyone except themselves.
Yeah, it's continuing business as usual, just without care for anyone else, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, Leo. Good work holding the sign, liking it. We're going to cruise around, see if we can find some other people to talk to, but thanks for being here. All right. Cool.
Hello.
I'm with Dr. Alexander Penson from the Physical Society of London. Tell us a little bit about what you do and that sphere we have back there.
Hi, yes, the Physical Society research different kinds of green technologies like this fungal concrete.
And this is called what? Funcrete, is it?
Funcrete, that's right, made of mycelium. Okay, so, but the truth is we're terrified, right? I'm a physicist, and like physicists, we see the catastrophe that is unfolding. New green technologies like this don't help at all unless you phase out, retire the old dirty technologies, right? And city firms are pouring billions of pounds into fossil fuels and other polluting industries, and the regulators of the City of London, including the new the mayor, are doing nothing to discourage that at all. We're here to just plead. We're here to plead with the new Lord Mayor to change the story. We've seen from the climate conference over the last couple of weeks that there is no substantial change in policy. We need a dramatic change, right? We love this city, right? We're the Physical Society of London, but we need something new, and change is now.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. Enjoy the rest of the parade.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, we are back outside the Bank of England, where you can see the activists have diverted the parade entirely now. They've had to close off and cordon the road with the messaging clearly there, COP has failed.
No, remember that, no. All I ask is,
So very courageous of the activists, raising awareness about the complicit nature of the financing that comes out of the City of London. 15% of the fossil fuel industry globally is financed from London. 50% of the insurance companies that insure the carbon market comes from London, and of course all the PR agencies as well. So as the government often says, just trying to say that we're just 1% of the problem. Actually, London is really the epicenter. See if we can speak to someone that's up here.
At the moment, the offence is not being committed. It's progress for us to kind of be on this close to the profession. Sorry, darling. I think there's not offence being committed at the moment.
She's a little bit preoccupied talking to the police at the moment, but yeah, it's been a very interesting scene. Everybody out here in support of all of the military going past, and at the same time, I'm hearing in my ear, activists from the global south, and having just spent 2 weeks in COP myself, it's a very strange end to the proceedings as this big parade was going past, and celebrating the military-industrial complex. And the reality is, as others have said, we're looking at 1.2 billion climate refugees in less than 30 years' time. The process has failed entirely in the sense that we needed a 45% emission reduction by 2030. That's to have us a 50-50 chance of reaching 1.5 degrees based on, unrealistic or unscalable sequestration technology. And in actual fact, even at the end of the COP process, we're on track for a rise in CO2 emissions by 13.7%. And that's even if all of the countries that have submitted nationally determined contributions actually, maintain their pledges and promises. But of course, there's no accountability, as we've seen with our own government, just all the greenwash. And so very, very shocked scenes, I think, down here. I also, strangely, when I was a child, I wanted to be in the military, and I was even in the Air Cadets. I've seen lots of these Air Cadets walking past, and I was in the Air Cadets at 12 years old. Always wanted to be a fighter pilot in the Royal Air Force, and that's kind of the Top Gun dream that I was sold without having any real clue the damage. I just thought it was all kind of Queen and country, and yeah, just completely oblivious. The conditioning that I had growing up in a country like the UK, but yeah, now I'm all too aware of the real nature of the wars that we've seen. They've said one of the exacerbating factors for the war in Syria, of course, was due to a 5-year drought beforehand, and all of the farmers had to move out of their rural locations into parts of the city that were already stressed for resources. So, and the military so far, they just seem to be increasing their defence budget, ready for the ensuing wars that will come, the instability that's caused, and we're going to witness globally due to the criminal negligence of those in charge right now. Not sure if you can still hear me, Vlad, if you could... Okay, great. Yeah, so what more can we say, where, we've seen the so we've got a little bit of shouting from one of the...
Hi. So we're with the brave protesters from the march. Hi, protester. Would you like to say a little bit about why you're here?
No, but wish you might. Question, sorry?
So what are you doing on the Lord Mayor's march?
We decided to put a price tag on the earth to make some money from it. Should I get down? Or should I maybe pass this up? Oh, right. Hi. Do I speak into this?
Give me a minute I'll tell you when I'm live.
Okay.
So, what are you doing on the Lord Mayor's march?
So I'm just deciding how much each part of the earth costs, because we are trying to make some profit from the land and from all the natural resources that we possibly can.
And how are you going to make these profits?
How are we going to make this profit? We are going to sell all the natural resources we possibly can to big oil and gas companies.
Which company are you from?
Which company?
Yeah.
Well, there's a few of them. We've got. I prefer not to say, because they give us donations kind of a bit secretly. So I prefer not to say where I get my money from. I don't bite the hand that feeds me, basically.
Wow. And what do you think will happen now?
Pardon? Sorry? Oh, someone...
Thank you very much.
Hello there. If you've just joined us, we are here outside the Bank of England, where these brave protesters have revealed their banners and flags at the last minute. We've got the Lord Mayor up there on top. He's having a nice feast on the planet by the looks of it. Of course, everyone in the City of London currently is complicit. Well, most people are complicit. We have a few good eggs, as Gal was saying earlier on our side, that are doing sort of activist investment. I believe it was Exxon board as well. They've had something similar going on there. But yeah, obviously this is the centre of global finance, and 15% of the money that comes out of the City of London, 15% of the oil sector is funded here in London. So clearly we have a huge role to play in the climate crisis. Of course, no mention of fossil fuels at all in the draft agreement that's come out of COP. It's as if it doesn't exist. And of all the delegates down at COP there, we had the ones with fossil fuel interests had the most amount of people there. So I think it was over 500 delegates were linked to the fossil fuel industry, when the states themselves only had like, I think, a maximum of the high end of 400 odd. So, you know, yeah, it's quite stark. Obviously, we know this corruption is going on, and people here today have obviously felt the need to bring this really important message to the people down in the City of London watching the Lord Mayor's show. And it's safe to say we've definitely put a show on for them today. I just see if I can have a chat. I'm not sure how good the audio is going to be if I interview someone, but do let me know. Hi, can you speak nice and loud and tell us why you're here today?
We're here to plead with the Mayor of London to do something. City corporations are still pouring billions into fossil fuels, which is taking us further and further into climate catastrophe. And like, I have a background in like science. Like, science just has been clear for decades that this is happening, and it's getting worse and worse. The problems that we're seeing are escalating. Like people are dying right now from air pollution, flooding, forest fires, and that's rapidly getting worse. And so we need a new approach. We've seen from the COP conference over the last couple of weeks, like, sure, they've talked about a lot of stuff, but then we're not seeing any kind of dramatic new solution. We need some kind of change, and change is now.
Yeah, thank you. It seems like the whole process was rigged to fail from the beginning.
I think, yeah, there's a lot of problems with the COP process. Like, I don't know, I don't have a magical solution there. Like, it's obviously a really, really difficult thing to get different nations to agree, but we have to start by facing up to the situation as it is. A lot of the speeches that you see at COP are just so brazenly at odds with what these countries are actually doing. I think that's what scares me, is that leaders will stand up there and say, oh, we need to act now, and then what they do is the exact opposite. They're opening new coal mines, new oil fields. It's shocking. It feels like a huge step towards, I don't know, authoritarianism. We're seeing that in many parts of the world. I feel terrified. I feel like this could get bad quickly unless we really start to face up to it.
And you're still a scientist, or
yeah.
And you know, we've got scientists that are retired now, like Sir David King, saying that what we do in the next 3 or 4 years will determine the fate of humanity. But it often seems that these scientists are, you know, educated in these institutions. I think someone said the other day, you know, a lot of them, they know what the reality of the collapses that we're in the midst of, but you know, they don't really want to rock the boat. That was a quote, you know.
No, I mean, it's not obvious how to get the change that we need. I mean, you know, we're just on the side of the road next to the Bank of England. Like, it's not obvious that what we're doing today is really going to move the needle, but we just need to keep imploring, just keep pleading with the people in power to do something. The Bank of England have lots of different tools that they could use. Like, a great example is capital requirements, right? That's totally their mandate. That's basically their job. They could set capital requirements on fossil fuels and would make it far less attractive for private firms, like big city firms, to invest in new fossil fuel projects.
So how does that work, capital requirements?
So when the Bank of England basically doesn't ever forbid companies from doing stuff, like that would be the role for laws, right? But what the Bank of England does do, the regulation, like the sort of enforcement that it uses, is to require companies to hold back capital, so an amount of money for every investment that they make. So a lot of economists and financial groups, organisations are demanding one-for-one capital requirements. So that means that if an institution, a private company, wanted to invest in fossil fuels, they'd have to hold, like if they want to invest £1 in it, they'd have to hold £1 back.
Right.
You can imagine that would make it far less attractive to them.
Yeah.
And the point is because it's so risky, right? Like the Bank of England have been doing this with all sorts of other assets that they consider risky. So like fossil fuels are literally endangering the future of life on the planet. And their mandate, bank's mandate, explicitly includes mitigating climate and ecological risks. It's completely insane that they aren't regulating fossil fuels. This is just a core part of their job, and they totally are asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, and like the most obvious thing we could do is obviously ban all new fossil fuel investment.
Whereas instead they're opening up new fields. It's completely insane.
Yeah,
that's killing.
Yeah, we've got the camo oil fields. I think I can't remember if it's the amount already in the reserves around the world. The oil reserves, it's like we've got 3 or 5 times more than.
We definitely can't afford to burn it. That's it. So we need to phase out. We need to phase.
And the power is held in very few hands. When it comes to climate change, 1% of the population is responsible for the carbon emissions of the bottom 50% of the planet. That is an extraordinary statistic, and most people do not want this. But unfortunately, they're brainwashed into going along with the status quo and thinking it's a good thing. So I apologise to anyone whose nice day out has been disrupted, but this is literally a matter of life and death. And that is what the intergovernmental scientists are actually telling the government, and they are ignoring it. Can we all please move forward and turn left? We've got a lot of horses coming down, and there's a risk of trampling. So we want to go forwards and turn left. And contrary to the propaganda, we are reasonable people. We want a decent life for everybody. Your hands up. We're pausing what we're doing because we don't want to spook the horses.
Link station, we're just watching this giant procession of horses coming past. This is kind of a celebration of the City of London and its power over the centuries. You know, over this time, it has come to be able to spend and create huge amounts of money. Its investments have fueled the expansion of the British Empire all around the world, has funded the expansion of British companies into these massive multinational companies that are now damaging, trampling, and taking whatever they want from the earth without any cause for the impact and the damage on the people who are around it, and also on our futures. So it's really interesting. I find it. I've never seen a march like this, and I actually heard earlier on George speaking there, saying actually he would have been on one of these marches. I think I would have been on one of these marches when I was a kid. But it's really interesting to think that now, you know, once we know about the climate and ecological emergency, it basically means that we kind of find it really, really difficult just to stand by and do nothing. We've got to actually step up and get involved. So I'm going to hand back over to George.
What is the transformative nature conserved? Nature makes our survival. Only through a fundamental system-wide organisation across technological, social, economic factors, in paradigms, values. So in normal language, what the government's own language, what the government's own scientists are saying is if we change everything, including the economy, the society, and the technology, and everything we're aiming for in terms of what society is geared towards, then we can have a decent future for our children. This is not us as activists saying it, this is the Intergovernmental Panel of Scientists. What that means is that we need, for the first time in human history, a much more equal world that values what is really important. That is why we're here today. London is the oldest parliament on the planet. It's been 800 years. It has economic accounts that nobody has ever been able to see. And it has been exerting democratic, corrupt influence on this country and the world throughout that time. That's why we're here. The bank, since the Paris Agreement was signed, the 60 biggest banks have invested $3.8 trillion in new fossil fuel infrastructure. The International Energy Agency was asked by the COP president, Alok Sharma, the government's chief representative at these climate talks in Glasgow, to provide a report to inform the negotiations that were going on. What they concluded was that we can have no new investments in coal, oil and gas. Yet banks in the City of London continue to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in new fossil fuels, and they're projected to invest another $5 trillion in the next 10 years.
So folks, we just... Let me just a quick thing. I've advised you. So folks, we're going to turn round. So folks... Mic check. Mic check. Okay, folks, we're going to go back that way. So, the Extinction Rebellion march. Turn around and go that way and let people in front know. Off we go, that way. Marching that way, we'll join in the parade from the sides. Okay, off we go. Off we go. Extinction Rebellion, we're just keeping it quiet when the horses are here.
Denies that it exists, you know, considering all the science, and there's a lot of, it makes me so upset because how dare you tell me that the climate crisis isn't real when I see it?
Oh, she's a small.
Coming from a place that we lived through it. We lived through it. Maybe you don't believe the science.
So what's the plan?
It's good. Thank you.
Sorry.
thinks there's others that are blocking us, so we have to go.
So just go in ones and twos. Just get going.
Yeah, I mean, you could just go out this way and just, we'll just walk there.
Probably.
Is there? There you are. There's a gap there. There's a gap there.
Yeah, go on in. Go out and find them. Victorian back. Just make your own way there, because you're never going to turn. It's just good.
Walking time.
Oh, yeah, walking.
Mile.
You can eat up. Oh no.
What are we up to? We're in a parade in London, and we figured that we'd join a parade, and you know, it's a people's parade, obviously, and we are the people. So we're here enjoying a parade with the Lord Mayor and inviting the Lord Mayor to come speak to us about how are we going to protect our citizens in this country and across the globe. Because if we continue to ignore the climate emergency, none of us are going to be alive. This is code red for humanity. You know, there is no other crisis that is taking place now that is an existential threat to our very survival as a human species. We cannot ignore the alarms and code red signaling that all the global scientists and the IPCC report has given to us. We have wisdom from experts and scientists given to us. Now we need to act upon that science.
I'm not listening to them.
And acting upon that science means here in the City of London, where they are 15% of the world's emissions in the world, but also they fuel fossil fuel. They finance the fossil fuel industry from this very place. The biggest funders of fossil fuel extraction and new projects is here in the City of London. Come on, guys, we're smart. This country, look at London, it's been surviving for all these years. It has no chance of surviving or its people. Once we hit those terrible runaway climate predictions of 2 degrees plus, this city will be underwater. The people will not be able to survive what's about to come if we don't keep the fossil in the ground. This is the alarm, this is the alert. You don't ignore a fire alarm when it's happening in your house. Don't ignore it when it's happening on your planet. And, you know, it's with love and with courage we stand here to have the truth be told to each of the citizens here in the UK. It is our very survival. And I hope, and I really hope, and that's the only reason I'm on these streets, is that there's going to be some shifts and some people coming to the streets so that corporations and governments start acting, because if they don't act, all of our survival is at risk. And thank you for tuning in, because we need you to tune in. We need your support and solidarity. Every voice counts, every action counts, but do act. Act in accordance to your consciousness, because this is not just about future generations. We will see destruction in our own lifetimes. And it's beautiful to see you guys. Keep well, keep happy, and keep smiling.
Hello everyone, I'm here in London, and this is Alice speaking to you, surrounded by XR flags and also a few people in a Remembrance parade. Now, for a lot of people this will be a contentious thing, but I do think it's important when we talk about Remembrance Weekend. It's a time to remember the people who sacrificed themselves in order to protect England and the streets that we're walking on in the UK, and made life possible as far in the way that it is today. And for many people here, it has been a bit of a tricky protest because it's been one of conflict. But perhaps no more perfect time here than to say, yeah, we agree, we want to honour those people in some way. We want to be able to protect this place that we're standing on. I think that's really, really important. And with me today, we've got loads of other people. We've got mums, dads, sisters, brothers, children, people from lots of different creeds, ethnicities and backgrounds. And it's really valuable that everybody is here together because it's bigger than just one or two people. That said, I do think sometimes it's easy to lose hope. So I've got someone here who's really making me feel hopeful. And this is Jeremy. So I'm going to move my camera around now so that you can see Jeremy. This is Jeremy. Jeremy, would you be able to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, Alice. Yeah.
I can hold on to this, don't worry about it.
Jeremy Cox. I'm a claimant in the Paid to Pollute case where we're taking the government to court shortly. But if I can just cut in on stuff you've just been saying, this was actually the Lord Mayor's parade.
I see, thank you.
Not a Remembrance parade.
That's really helpful to know.
It was nothing to do with poppies. It was all to do with the loads of money in the City of London.
That's very helpful to know because I didn't know that. I just sort of dropped from London, so I was like, what is going on?
No, well, I'm sure XR would think twice, three times, and many more times about disrupting the Remembrance Day parade. But
that's so helpful to know because I didn't know that. So that's great. Let's walk together while we about that. I'll walk backwards. Okay, so this is not, just to clarify, this is not a Remembrance parade. It might seem like it. Lots of poppies.
Thank you. Okay. And you make your point. Andy, come on. Andy, come on, you made your point. Well, the thing is, you're going to get me really. Andy! Andy, come on. Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, everyone, you're back with me. We lost signal for a little bit, but we're back. As I mentioned, we are not at the Remembrance Weekend march. Instead, this is a mayoral organised march. You just told me that. Thank you very much. And if you've just joined and you weren't hearing who this is to begin with, I'm going to let him introduce himself again. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, this beacon of hope I have in front of me, that's really what I see you as. So here you go. If you want to say your name and also why you're here, and why you're here with a hashtag Paid to Pollute sign.
yeah, hi, it's Jeremy Cox, and I'm the XR claimant as part of the Paid to Pollute case, where we're taking the government to court for basically subsidising oil companies in the North Sea and Canberra and places like that. So the whole point of the court case is to try to stop any new fields being opened in the North Sea. And to divert all of that money, they've paid £4 billion since signing up to the Paris Agreement. £4 billion that you stack pound coins, one on top of another. That's the height of 36,000 shard buildings. And it will take you, if you put one on every second, through your birthday, through Christmas, no bank holidays or anything, it will take you 127 years to pile up those £4 billion. That's how much £4 billion is. And that's how much of our money the government has given to oil companies. Do oil companies need our money? I hardly think so. So let's divert that money to climate justice, to paying for reparations for companies for loss and damage, to countries for loss and damage, and let's divert it towards a just transition. And let's stop any new exploration in the North Sea.
Now, there will be people watching this that will find it really difficult to stomach the thought of being in a parade that it has been so controversial today, especially, but also just standing on a street holding a flag, holding a sign like you are, seems like a really scary thing for some people. But I think your case is a really good evidence of how you can really see this climate crisis and action on it from lots of different avenues. For anyone watching or tuning in right now who is hearing about Pay to Pollute for the first time, where you are a claimant taking the government to court and thinking maybe I could do the same, what would you say to those people?
I'd say go and look at our website, which is www.paytopollute.org.uk, and find out a lot more about the case there, because yeah, it's challenging to challenge the government in court, but it's not a difficult thing to do, as long as you've got the right backing. And having the backing of XR for being a claimant on that it's been great as far as I'm concerned.
And why do you have a case?
Well, we have a case because we believe the government is breaking the law, and our case isn't one of the we think you're going to cause so and so many £1 billion worth of damage in the future and destroy people's lives, therefore we want damages. It's because we believe that the way they're doing what they're doing is actually illegal.
Could you elaborate on that?
It gets a bit technical, but it's to do with the definition of something called maximising the economic recovery of oil and gas from the UK continental shelf. And the way that they work that out is to do it before tax. And that means that we miss out billions, all those billions of pounds that I was just talking about, of revenues flowing through the tax system. They essentially get mixed out of the equation. And we're not really talking about the economic, as far as the UK is concerned, extraction of oil and gas. We're talking about profitable as far as the oil companies are concerned. The government is it's got a policy which says make the North Sea the most profitable place for oil and gas companies to work. And that's, from a citizen's point of view, fairly disgusting, and it doesn't exactly add up to keep 1.5 alive. It doesn't add up to our commitment to 1.5 degrees from Paris. It doesn't add up at all to our legal commitment to net zero by 2050.
Now, I see you really honestly as a beacon of hope. It really excites me that you're doing what you're doing, but you're not doing it alone, are you?
No, I'm not. There are two other claimants. Karen from Aberdeen, her father was the shop steward on the rigs way back, and the other claimant is Michaela Loach, who some people might have heard about, but essentially she is a medical student. She's taking a year out at the moment, medical student in Edinburgh, and a climate activist. And she was actually in Vogue last week. She had an article on her in Vogue last week, and she was also in Breitbart last week. And I got a name check in both of those, so thank you, Michaela.
Yeah, Michaela Loach also, if you're not aware, she does do a podcast. It's called the Yikes podcast, and it does specifically talk about what you can do to combat the climate crisis and mobilize. So I would recommend you had a listen to that. And she's very present on social media. So you're watching this on social media, you're probably aware of things like Instagram, worth following her. Now, could you tell me a bit about your story? What's got you holding that sign there?
Well, way back, I was actually employed by the oil industry. When I left university, I joined ESO. It's not something I feel too guilty about, because back in those days, that was in the 70s and early 80s, the ESO had known about, or Exxon had known about, the damaging effects of climate gases getting reduced, greenhouse gases getting put up into the atmosphere. They knew that was damaging the climate in 1959, and they kept all that information to themselves. They used it to help them lobby whenever anybody got a sniff of it, and they just certainly didn't tell their employees, and they didn't tell the public, didn't tell anybody. So as far as I'm concerned, yeah, a little bit guilty for working in the oil industry, but that was way back.
And it's about mobilising everyone, regardless of your background. We all have a vested interest on this planet, and its life systems are being held.
The judge, when she agreed that we had a case and that as claimants we were the right people to be bringing the case, she actually quoted my having worked in the oil industry, which helped. But I don't know if SO's recruitment vetting was particularly good, because I was a member of Greenpeace at the time, and Greenpeace at that time was carrying out some pretty crazy actions. So, but they let me in, and as far as I'm concerned, I was probably the only Greenpeace person on the refinery. But on the other hand, so were all the other Greenpeace people on the refinery who didn't tell anybody that they were a member of Greenpeace.
Now, I think it's important to mention the other parties at play, not only Michaela Loach, the other claimant, but also Greenpeace, Amazon Watch, the many other bodies that are fighting for change. There will be people watching this looking for motivation. What would you say to those people as a last thing, please?
Well, yes, we have 20, if you go onto the website, you'll see we're supported by over 20 organisations, including Friends of the Earth. Just a shout out for Friends of the Earth. Our court cases on the 8th and 9th of December, they are in the Royal Courts of Justice on the 7th and 8th of December, related to the government's financing of Mozambique oil. I'd just say to everybody, I don't know, I was interviewed in Glasgow by some French youths, French students, and they asked me what my advice was. And it's quite difficult sometimes to give advice to young people when you're as old as I am, but luckily Barack Obama had done it the night before. But I think this applies to old people, young people, all people, is keep being angry, keep being frustrated, but focus.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Thank you very much, Alice.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That was Jeremy Cox next to me now with a paid pollute to pollute side because right now he is taking the government to court. So please,
in this place we're just coming up to.
In this place we're just coming up to, actually. Where are we?
We're just coming up to the Royal Courts of Justice on the right.
Okay. So if you're wondering where we are, where do you need to get to? The Royal Courts of Justice is where we are. We're quite easy to spot. We've got lots of flags, lots of bells and whistles. Everybody is very happy to chat to you. And as you can see, the march is going ahead. Don't want to get in anyone's way. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. Wow, what a perfect part of London to be for this conversation. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, I'm going to keep going in through the crowd now, see who else I can speak to, and see if we can get everybody seeing who is at this protest, because it's not just one or two people. There's lots of us, lots of people with a vested interest in protecting this beautiful planet that we're living in. So let's see who I can chat to today. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments. If you're outraged about what's happening right now, please put it in the comments. If you have anything that you think people aren't talking about yet, that they need to talk about to do with the climate crisis, please pop them in the comments. And if you think what's going on is outrageous, please give us better solutions on the online, these social platforms. We can use them to do exactly that. So as you can see, we've got people here from lots of different walks of life, with lots of different reasons for being here. For myself, wildlife is my main passion for being here today. I can hear Gail Bradbrook is in front of me there. Today she's been talking a lot about the injustice, social justice. In front of me here is Ray, she's from South Africa, came over here to see COP26 and have a voice if she could. We spoke to her earlier. If you haven't watched that, do have a listen. And we've got people from all over the place. So let's see if I can talk to some people. Or maybe let's have a listen to what's being said on the microphone.
Extinction! 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 In a moment, we're going to keep marching, but I just want to say, I feel very, very strongly, and I hope you feel as well. It's so nice. That was a beautiful cheer. I can hear your voices. What I also want to hear is your anger. We have a responsibility here, especially I look around me, it's mainly white faces. That's not something to be ashamed of, but it's an invitation to be more radical. It's not just about passing the mic. When you pass the mic to someone of colour, someone from the global south, what you must then do is listen, understand, and act. What they are telling us to do is that we need to change this system. This system is held up here in the City of London. We need to and we need to be angry about it. We need to understand what is driving the climate crisis, and we need to be angry enough that we have the energy to start taking it down. Because only when we make space for the solutions that we need will those solutions be able to appear. It is a finite space. It's called market share. Economists love to talk about it. But we're never going to have a poll tax. We're never going to have a cooperative energy. We're never going to have energy sovereignty all around the world until we make space, until the big polluters get out, until the money is out of fossil fuels. So we need to be angry. We, as white people, have a responsibility to take this deeper, to be more radical. That is what solidarity looks like. It is not just about retweeting what your person of colour friend says. It is about understanding what they say and taking it deeper. It is about taking action. In a moment, we're going to continue walking. We sadly only can walk down this small area on this left-hand side here. We're going to go past members of the public. This is an opportunity to talk to those members of the public. It's an opportunity to tell them why we are here. And then we're going to turn left and we're going to head down onto the embankment, onto the riverside. Extinction! Extinction! Rebellion! We were told, it's been said that tomorrow will be too late to do what we should have done a long time ago. We've seen a walkout recently from COP26 of Indigenous representatives. The official delegation walked out from COP26. They know, they did this because they know the solution that is being offered in COP in Glasgow will not work, is no solution to the climate change. The solution being offered by the UN, by Mark Carney, the former governor of the banks of both England and Canada, and current manager, vice chair of an investment management company which manages over $625 billion. These interests will not present a solution. It has to come from us. It has to come from our streets. It has to come from the people in Britain, the working people around the world, the working people, the oppressed peoples from Bolivia, from Peru, from West Africa, South Africa, from East Asia. We need to look to the examples of the people fighting back in West Papua against the Indonesian government, against the British backing, against the multinationals destroying West Papuan lands. We need to look to the Bolivian people who recently overthrew a US-backed coup, which was made explicitly to steal the lithium, which would be used for the batteries in your electric cars and mobile phones. We need to look to these examples of resistance and take from their example that we need a resistance in Britain. We heard from Mia Motley, who is the Prime Minister of Barbados, and she said at COP26, are we so blinded and hardened that we can no longer appreciate the cries of humanity? That was said at COP26. We're going to turn around and go right onto the river. Yes, the people who are not turn around right onto the river.
What's happening?
All right, so yeah, we're trying to get through and march on our way and exercise our democratic right to be on the streets to protest. something that is protected in the European Convention on Human Rights, our right to protest. And right now we're being blocked by the police. Just turn around, we can see. We wanted to go down this road and they've just stopped us from doing that. So now we're heading along. We're going down this road. We're going to turn right, I think, and we're going to carry on. But to be honest, we're just flowing like water. Extinction Rebellion, we know that no matter what, we've got to make our voices heard. We've got to find a way of getting our voices heard. And so we're headed down the road now. We're going to cruise along. We're going to try and make sure that more people hear our message. That COP26 is failing us, has failed, and that we need to take power together. We need to demand more of our leaders. We need to get the Citizens' Assembly going. And Citizens' Assembly, for those people who don't know, is where you select a random group of people from the British population, like a jury, just at random, all across the cross-section of the society. Get them in a room together, and then you get them speaking together, discussing the options, informed by scientists and engineers of all the different things they could do, and then they come up together using their brains, using their common sense to come up with a solution that works for everybody, and that's fair. And so we trust ordinary people to make hugely important decisions in juries, in our criminal justice system. And in this case, we need ordinary people's voices to come through. We need ordinary people's opinions and understandings to be put to work, to be able to make a solution here that works, because the solutions that the government is producing, the solutions that our politicians are creating are not going to work. They're already looking like they're going to take us over 2.4 degrees, which, if you know anything about this business, 2.4 degrees is basically releasing potentially a hell on earth situation. We're getting over 2 degrees, the potential for these positive feedback loops, these out of control temperature rises starts to increase really massively. So that's why it's so important we stay below 2 degrees. It's really important that we stay below 1.5 degrees, because if you're on a low-lying nation, if you're on a low-lying country, vulnerable to sea level rise or even freshwater flooding, then 1.5 degrees going above that sentences you and millions of people like that to death. So we need to get out there. And so we need ordinary people in citizens' assemblies. This is what Extinction Rebellion's third demand is all about, to come together and create the solutions that our politicians are either too scared, too ignorant, or too greedy to implement. So, we're facing tough times, but ordinary people should be able to get us out of this mess with a decent plan, rather than the nonsense and the greenwash that's being spun out of COP26. So for those of you who don't know what's going on here today, we're Extinction Rebellion. We're in the City of London, one of the leading sources of fossil fuel finance in the world. 15% of the world's fossil fuel funding comes through the City of London. And if the City of London were a country, it would be ranked 9th in the world in terms of its carbon footprint. So the City of London has this power, huge power. And when you've got power, you have a responsibility to use it. And we're arguing, we're saying, we're demanding that people with power use their power now to step up in the climate and ecological emergency, start to take action, start to create the large changes that we need, start to take leadership. We need leadership at all levels. And we need institutions like the City of London. We need institutions like the Bank of England. We need institutions all around the world at all levels to say, actually, we're in a climate and ecological emergency. Our leaders are failing us. We're going to start to take action ourselves to secure the future for our children and for all people to come. And, we need a planet that's living for all people and everything all to come in the future. So please, we need you to join us. We need Extinction Rebellion to become larger, become more powerful, become more diverse, to become more effective at making our government do what ordinary people want, and which is action on the planet's future.
Right, everyone, you're probably wondering, where on earth are they now? We seem to keep getting redirected, but right now we are walking towards the river. That's what I'm told. So we're going from the courts of justice down to the river. And of course, as I said, we've got lots of people around us. We've got Jeremy Cox next to us, who's taking the government to court, and we've got this gentleman here. People are coming together from all different walks of life, no matter how where your area is, your area of expertise, or even if you don't have one. There's lots going on. And I noticed this gentleman here with a sketch pad, and every time we stop, he's got his pen out and done this beautiful, beautiful sketch. Now I'm going to turn this round the camera so that you can see it a bit better. And then I'm also going to get chatting to him about why there is space for everybody at these movements. So here is his wonderful drawing. So I know artists can get a little bit worried about their art being seen, but that's beautiful, isn't it? Really beautiful. And I think one thing that I think is great about XR is that there is really space for everybody. And you're an artist today. Oh, you're showing me more. Here we go. There's more here. This is from the artist's interpretation of the march.
Well, we stopped en route.
Ah, I see. And you've even got the pay to pollute sign.
Police were holding us back on that side.
Oh, there we go. Did they like your... Oh, wow, you've even got colours in there. That's fantastic. Oh, gosh, wow. Gosh.
Beautiful Peruvian ladies hugging them.
Oh, I'm hoping to speak to them a little bit later. Now, I'm going to focus on you a bit more now. Could you introduce yourself?
I'm Mark. I'm a software engineer, and today I've got my sketchbook out to try and capture some of what I'm embedded in as part of this protest today.
And why is it important, what's happening today?
Well, a lot of people have said that COP26 was a last chance to turn things around. And I don't think we ever believed that radical change was going to come out of COP26. But in the wake of that finishing, what kind of response is appropriate to the disappointment that I feel about being let down, that there's no plan to do the action that we need. And so I think being here and being together with these people is a chance to at least create a kind of lifeboat of sanity as we slide into this horrific future. That's why it's important to be here.
Thank you. I can sort of see your mind turning there. It is quite an overwhelming experience, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been busy drawing today and not thinking about that issue. And your question has really brought it home to me. That is why I'm here.
And for that sense of hopelessness, I think when you galvanise people and community like this, really does help to change how you feel about that to some degree. But I think a big hopeful point is to say that when we come together like this, it does show that there is momentum building and there is public support around making the big changes, the changes that governments are reluctant to do because they're worried about their reputation and things like that.
I don't know. They're embedded in something that prevents them from seeing a way of achieving the role that they have to take.
Is there anything that's come out of COP26 that has given you hope?
I wish I had a good answer for you. I'm just feeling abandoned today, and that's why I'm here. So I'm here with you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here with you.
Well, thank you for your honesty. I feel like that it's really important to be honest, because there will be some people watching from home that will be feeling the same as you, definitely at the moment.
I, don't always feel comfortable participating in these things, and it's been an interesting journey. And bringing the pen down today and making some sketches with watercolour, there are some more in the bag that you haven't seen, feels like a way of doing something else. Of using what I've got. You were talking about feeling hopeful. There's an opportunity to use what I've got here today, and maybe people will be interested in seeing some ink and watercolour pictures differently from photographs, and maybe we can reach some corners of social media that photographs don't go by doing this. So your original question was about why it's important for everybody, for all different kinds of people to be involved, and I think that's the answer. Is that what the stories that we take home, mine will be partly on paper, but the stories that we tell when we go home about what happened, they all make small influences on the people that we talk to, and through our network,
And no individual can bring about the change that we need, but together what all of us do, and bring all of those little places to the people who don't normally get included. That's the way we can get the message out, and maybe something will come of that. There's some hopefulness in that, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. You could be an artist, you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you can be none of the above, and you can still have a place here.
Yes.
What would you say to anybody that is feeling a bit hesitant about being involved?
When you get here, and they start to understand that the hesitant and real and visual experience. Living your life on Zoom, nothing ever creeps up behind you or surprises you. And here, we're embedded in a 360-degree world. You never know when there's police, or today, you know, the soldiers and the giant inflatable cows or whatever they were, so creeping up. This is real. This is real.
Thank you. And the last question I want to ask you is, we've had a bit of doom and gloom in there where we've felt a bit sad. We are feeling a bit sad. There is some hope in there. We've talked a little bit about that. But what if things are as dire as we can see them being? What's the point?
So I'm following the fantastic Oxford Climate Society's course on climate change. Right now, it's running now. And they explained
Sorry, guys. I'm going to make sure that beyond politics.
I wondered if your little mic would pick it up.
Yeah, I can hear it.
They explained that in the last 10 years, it's become feasible, technically feasible, net zero. They wouldn't believe that was even true 20 years ago. What it needs, what we haven't got, is willpower, political will to make that change. It's not an easy change, but it requires enormous change of investment, enormous change of infrastructure, and I don't even see a beginning of that. That's why I was so sad when you asked me what comes out of COP, and I'm like, that's what I'm looking for, because there are the scientists saying this is the means by which we could achieve it. It's not going to be easy. I don't even see a beginning of that.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to move on now because I think we're going to another place. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful protest, and I will see you soon, I'm sure. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Let's see what we can see around us. I had to take my microphone out there for a second to be able to platform that gentleman there. We are now over by the river. We've made it to a destination. There's still a few of us here. A plant-based world, a loving world. That is a particularly important point to mention here at COP, here in lieu of a failed COP, essentially. There's lots of stuff that's come out of COP that's been clearly problematic. One of those things has definitely been a lack of representation of people in areas that are feeling the climate crisis much more acutely than we are. Another area of concern is where fossil fuel companies had the most number of delegates. We are actually seeing some speeches though right now. So giving some context about why this is important. So I'll come back and we'll be talking about COP some more in a moment. Definitely not pop. So let's tune in and see what's being said.
If you want to get a fossil fuel contract, let's say off the coast of Italy, you want the rights to explore for oil off the coast of Italy, this is a real example, you need to go to the government, you get the contract rights, you have to go get financing, you have to get insurance, you have to get all sorts of things to get those contracts. Now what then happens is, in 2021, the Paris Climate Agreement happens. If you feel comfortable to do it, I would really encourage you now to sit down. Sitting down is a really good thing to do, and they've made it nice and sandy, just avoid the piles of shit. So what happens is that these legal firms just around the corner, one of them, the one that I can remember, is called RWE, and what they do when you've got your fossil fuel exploration contract, the Paris Climate Agreement signed, the Italian government then turned around and said, but we can't honour this contract. We can't let you exploit the oil off our coast, because then we will go over the emissions targets that we have pledged. So what RWE does is it steps in on behalf of Shell or BP or anyone who will pay the legal fees, and it will sue that country. So at the moment, the Italian government is being sued in a UK court for lost profits, for the profits that that company would have made due to the exploration, the exploitation of that oil resource. The other place that this is happening is in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta, same thing's happening. We're blocking the road to get our message across. It's a protest. So because the City of London has an enormous responsibility. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a person here who's asking. Okay, here we go. Ah, so there's a person here who's asked why you're blocking a road. This man, if you can't hear him, is saying that I'm blocking this road because I've got a 3-year-old child and I'm terrified. Now, it's important to know that while this is happening, the context is dire for the climate crisis. We've had fires that are still ongoing right now. 1.5 is being lauded as a healthy space for our planet. It certainly isn't. Anything we can do to be below 1.5 is important. COP26, this big climate summit that we're all in reflection of right now, is a demonstration of that. Current commitments will take us to 2.4 at a minimum. This is huge.
But the ability to live a life free from fear, free from anxiety, free from being terrified about the future. We're here to give them a chance to even have the opportunity to dream about a different kind of future.
Okay. Now that was a father of a 3-year-old. He was just explaining why we're in the middle of the road, why this is so important. Here, there's lots and lots and lots of people. There's a parade coming on its way, I believe, which is why this sort of action is important. What's more important, a parade or a planet that supports our life systems?
Please move to the side of the road. You can carry on your protest.
This is for our children.
Somebody on the microphone just said, this is for our children. This is for their children as well. This is a particularly emotional time for people here. This is really... You will die of old age. Our children will die of climate change. That's what that sign on front of one's face, shirt had here.
This is for you, whether you agree with what we're doing or not.
Again, this is the gentleman on the microphone.
This is for fear.
You can see he's getting very upset here. Yeah.
This is for my children.
Okay, I'm going to try and talk to you.
Let's hear, make some chants, right? 1, 2, 3.
I'm going to try and chat to this man he's obviously got upset. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. I'm with Extinction Rebellion. Are you okay to be interviewed? I appreciate you're upset. Yeah, I can give you a minute. Absolutely. As you can see, oh gosh, it's really hard to watch people getting so upset like that and not be with them, if you understand the realities of the climate crisis. Standing on a street, sitting on the ground is not what most people would want to do with their Saturday. And this gentleman, he's being consoled right now. Oh, you can see the grief on his face. Now I'm going to turn around and see if he will chat to me for a moment and explain exactly what has brought him to tears. I think we heard some of it, but it is difficult to hear that in and amongst this protest where there is a lot going on. But the resounding message should be that climate change is what we're here about. You might not support some of the things that have been said today, and please, if that's the case, let us know. Tell us. Put how you feel in the comments. We want to get as many people on board as possible. Now, we're building on momentum here from COP26, which if you're watching and you're thinking, well, I understand roughly what that is, but what is it really? Well, it's 197 nations and territories which meet every year to monitor and review the implementation of the UN framework and the Convention of Climate Change. You might have heard of the Paris Agreement, the current state of the agreements put in place in this COP will not meet the agreements of the Paris Agreement beforehand, trying to keep the world at a what's considered a safe level of 1.5 degrees of warming. What on earth is degrees of warming? Well, when we talk about 1.5 degrees of warming, we're talking about the increase in the Earth's average temperature. We measure this increase from a baseline average temperature in the mid to late 19th century, when the
They need to push for profit, they need to push for their continual growth, not for the needs of humanity, but while the working people starve, while people in poverty in Britain, while food bank use goes through the roof. Capitalist banks, the finance companies, those companies in those great big offices over the road, over the river, they are profiting, they are growing, while our working people, that we are going ever closer towards starvation, into poverty, into insecure housing. So
I'm with Dr. Alexander Penson from the Physical Society of London. Tell us a little bit about what you do and that sphere we have back there.
Hi, yes, the Physical Society research different kinds of green technologies like this fungal concrete.
And this is called what? Funcrete, is it?
Funcrete, that's right, made of mycelium. Okay, so, but the truth is we're terrified, right? I'm a physicist, and like physicists, we see the catastrophe that is unfolding. New green technologies like this don't help at all unless you phase out, retire the old dirty technologies, right? And city firms are pouring billions of pounds into fossil fuels and other polluting industries, and the regulators of the City of London, including the new the mayor, are doing nothing to discourage that at all. We're here to just plead. We're here to plead with the new Lord Mayor to change the story. We've seen from the climate conference over the last couple of weeks that there is no substantial change in policy. We need a dramatic change, right? We love this city, right? We're the Physical Society of London, but we need something new, and change is now.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. Enjoy the rest of the parade.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Still in central London, down by the river here. Sorry, my phone died when we were in the middle of talking before, but hopefully I can catch you up on what we were chatting about before. My phone went blank. Here with me, though, I have Rob. We were talking a moment ago about how I was going to see if I could get Rob to talk. Unfortunately, Rob did get quite upset, but it is important to get upset in these spaces because that's the reality of what we're talking about. It is upsetting. And if you've just tuned in, you're wondering what happened. Well, one of the public asked, why are we sitting in the road? What's going on? Like, he was a bit upset himself, actually, at that.
He is pretty agitated.
He was pretty agitated. Could you tell me what you said on the microphone? Because we couldn't quite hear you, and then you did get upset, and I think you needed a breather.
I did.
I was explaining to him that this is for our children, that this whole motivation is so that our children, their children, future generations can even have the opportunity to make choices, can even live a life free from fear of what might happen. I'm very mindful of the mental health impacts that this situation is having on lots and lots of people, particularly children and young people. There's a lot of work done by Force of Nature. Have you heard about those guys?
No, I haven't.
So Clover Hogan and Force of Nature have got a lot of work that they do around eco-anxiety in young people. I do a similar bit of work with older people in business and so on around climate grief and eco-anxiety as well. And it's a I don't know how we can ignore it. I don't know how we can continue to walk around pretending that everything's absolutely normal when we're talking about the end of civilization, end of, well, at least just the transition from one system to another is going to involve partial collapse, right? So in many ways it's inevitable that, we're going to suffer and we're going to lose quite a lot as we move from one system to another. And I think the reason that we're here is that we want to speed that transition up and make it as smooth and as soft as possible, rather than sleepwalking into a much bigger type of collapse. One of the things that that worries me quite a lot is food security. And I think about my children, and I think about when they're my age, they will no doubt be living in a very insecure food network. If we think about the third pole towards the Himalayas, as that starts to melt, irrigation in the basin around that is going to impact crop production. You're then going to have people in China who will then they won't be able to rely on that grain production, so they'll be competing with US grain, food prices will soar, and it will become harder and harder for people to eat or to be able to afford to eat. Then we've got the impacts of 2 degrees and more, and crop failures and famines all over the world. And I think about that being the legacy that my children grow up in. And it hurts me to my core because they're my babies and I love them, I want to protect them. So when I think about how insecure and unstable their futures will be, and I see them right now and I see how they've got no idea what's coming, you just want to love them and protect them and cherish them. So when you just come up against this huge city of London, this pompous parade of finery that's medieval, there's this cultural inertia that is centuries old that we have to try and challenge and overthrow. And it's such a huge task. This city of London, where the monarch can't even come without invitation, this is the heart of our capitalist system, where it was born. And we're right there, and I feel today very much like banging my head against a cliff, not a brick wall. So for me, a lot of emotion is welling up inside me in terms of seeing the task at hand, the scale of the challenge, and the difficulty of it, and the time that we've got to do it. And more, my mind moves from thinking about mitigation to adaptation. And in that adaptation, there's a lot of optimism for finding things at the fringes that are working and then one day becoming the mainstream. But then there's also a lot of sadness in the sense of how much we're going to lose. I
think it's important to interject there, really, because you said at the very beginning, I just don't understand how people can sit back and do nothing and not see that this is very proportionate action. I do think
this is nothing. We should be doing more than
this. Well,
I was asking the question the other day about tipping points, right?
Right. For people at home, they won't know what that means, so if you could explain that.
Okay, so tipping points are where, for example, with climate change, once a certain amount of CO2 gets into the atmosphere or a certain amount of warming occurs, that then sets in motion a bunch of other activities, such as the release of methane up in the Arctic Circle, that then gets us on a sort of exponential trajectory towards even greater climate impacts. But there's also ideas around positive tipping points, such as at what point do we end up having more electric cars than fossil fuel and so on. But then there's also personal tipping points in the sense of at what point do you think, okay, well I need to step back now or I need to do this and so on. But one of the tipping points I've been thinking about recently is along this idea of Why does it seem that it's easier for people to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism? At what point do we get a tipping point where fewer and fewer people believe in the status quo and business as usual as a system that serves them? And at what point do we reach a tipping point where more people realise that they've got less skin in the game? I'm particularly interested in seeing what younger generations do as they inherit this warped and destructive system and go, well, hang on a minute, this isn't doing me any favours, this is like just ruining my future. I've got no skin in this game, I don't want to be a part of it, I want to do something different. We've got way too many people sort of like aged 40, 50, 60 and above who this system has served very, very well, and they don't want to change and they don't give a shit.
Not everybody, but a lot of people, yeah.
Not everybody, I shouldn't say that, I'm generalising, but I mean, like, culturally it feels like there's a lot more energy and I hope power with the younger generations coming through, because we just don't have time. We've got a huge task at hand, and part of me is struggling with this idea of agency and how much we can change things, and also accepting unknown things will happen and we're not in control and things emerge and we have to go with it. And then this idea that at the end of the day we are nature, we are a part of nature. The planet peoples, just like an apple tree apples, right? We are from this earth, we're part of this ecosystem, and we're just as much open to natural selection as anything else. I think it's really important that as a culture we start to remember our mortality and our interconnection with the natural world and realise that we are a species. We are in an ecosystem. We might feel insulated from it, especially when you're in places like London. You forget. You feel abstract. We've got this cultural inertia as well from our religious backgrounds too, of being made and put here, rather than integral and part of this. And I think it's those ideas that separate us from nature, that cause us to not see our true identity. And for me, this is just a farce, because it just comes down to the fact that all of this, the ecological crisis, the climate crisis, is a crisis of identity, a lack of connection, and a belief in an economic system that is paradigmatically flawed. It's like, I feel like we're on the edge of a Copernican revolution.
Explain that, that's a big word.
Okay, so about, I don't know,
in like a sentence.
Okay, so people used to believe that the Earth was the centre of the universe.
Right.
So they came up with all these different maps of the heavens to make sense of the stars and the planets moving around.
Right.
But because the Earth isn't at the centre of the universe, they had to come up with all these weird patterns to make it make sense. And they lived like that for hundreds of years. Then Copernicus and Galileo come along and go, no. The sun is the centre of the solar system and the planets revolve around it. All of a sudden everything makes more sense. You can start making predictions about how things are going to move and what's going to happen, and it leads to the development of physics and of science, and we start to have cultural information that's more useful for keeping us alive and to be able to do stuff. We're at the same point right now. The reason that this is all crumbling and falling apart is because this is an economic paradigm that looks at a linear relationship. It looks at the environment as a subsystem of the economy, a resource that is used in a linear extractive fashion. But that's false, because the economy is actually a subsystem of the environment. The economy is a part of an ecosystem.
Right.
And if you've got a subsystem that is growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, using up all those resources in order to create value, to create GDP, within a closed system, it's inevitable that the larger closed system will collapse. So until we recognise that you can't have an infinitely growing subsystem within a closed system of a planet, we're screwed. So we need a completely different economic paradigm and a completely different notion of human identity to go with it. That is a huge cultural shift.
Yeah, it's enormous. I mean, you said that you were surprised that like people that are surprised. Well, there's a frustration that other people, some people, don't feel like this is proportionate, and it isn't. But like in any way,
what we're doing is tiny.
Exactly. But there are some people that even feel this tiny action is too much.
Yeah.
But you can see looking around us right now why people might have that perspective. I mean, people here can live their life fairly normally. They will be able to live this life fairly normally for the next few years before it becomes something that they have to come to to have a reality check themselves. Is someone who I really hoped we'd speak to today for a group that are here. There's a Peruvian group of people who were really happily talking to me earlier before the cameras started about how acutely they're feeling the climate crisis in parts of Peru and other parts of the global south. There's a girl, Ray, who we spoke to at the beginning of this live stream, who was explaining how crop shortages are affecting people that she lives around right now, and those sorts of things. What's the missing link? How do we get people watching this who might be skeptical, or how do we get people who are willing to kick a protester off the road or do their best possible attempts at blocking the truth and the reality of the climate crisis? What do we do? I appreciate you're not the pinnacle of all everything, but you know, you are a father, you've got an investor, you've got a child.
This is why
Thea that you mentioned earlier.
This is why I think it comes back to emotion. I think if we look at indigenous cultures in particular, one of the reasons that people are so keen to look at their types of cultures because they've still managed to maintain that connection to the subconscious and to something bigger than themselves and a sense of awe and reverence for the natural world, which we don't have necessarily within our culture as much as...
What you do in children? Children are like, whoa, with all I shall know as a dad.
So in terms of people that struggle with the climate crisis and engaging with it and just want to ignore it, I would offer them empathy and say basically...
It's not so much for them, it's more like, what do we do as people who are aware? How do we... Because it's no good us preaching to the choir or creating an echo chamber. We need to get out of this space to get more people mobilised. So more what I was hoping from asking that question is more like, what do you see anything that we could be talking about that we're not, or areas that we can be really pushing? We're not.
We should be talking about economics.
Right.
I know it sounds boring, but
it does. It's another unsexy topic that a lot of people feel closed off from. So
we should be talking about ecological economics.
Right.
And we should be talking about biomimicry, and we should be talking about an ecological civilization. Essentially, for me, the climate crisis is an opportunity to reimagine civilization.
Okay.
It's that big. That's what this is.
So where do you point people to find out what on earth that means? Where do they look? Where does somebody watching this, feeling hopeless, feeling confused, feeling frustrated, what do they do? Where do they go?
It depends. If they're in business themselves and they want to think about how do I do business differently in a different type of economy, then give me a shout at the Pathfinders Co. But more importantly, I'd say go check out Donut Economics by Kate Rayworth. I'd say go check out the work by Herman Daly on ecological economics. I'd say check out a guy called Tim Jackson about post-growth.
Right, okay.
And I'd say, start paying attention to the unsexy world of economics, because the root cause of the climate crisis is not carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a symptom. The root cause of the climate crisis is economic growth, unbridled,
social
infinite
injustice.
Economic growth, which is tied to all of these different... Our systems are failing, and the biggest driving force of all our systems is our economic system, our global capitalist economic system, which is designed and run to create inequality. So from that comes social injustice, and climate change and ecological crises are just additional symptoms of a crumbling, flawed and failing system.
Thank you very much for talking to me. Really appreciate your time. I'm sorry you got upset earlier, but it is necessary and it's
real.
Very valid.
I have emotions. I feel it.
Yeah. I know being in your position, it's not fun to do that in front of so many people. So I
chose
appreciate
to
your
do it. I
values.
take it. It's my responsibility.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, everyone, I think we're going to start wrapping up now on the live stream, but that does not mean that the action has stopped at all. There's loads of people here that we can talk to. That gentleman was just one of many, many people here standing in the road, on the river. Where are we? We're on Temple Avenue at the moment. So if you do want to come and join us, this is where we are. There's people handing out flyers here saying, please talk to me. I can tell you why we're here. I can tell you more about all of those sorts of things. One of those gentlemen is with me right next to me now. He's got a sign, got some leaflets he's handing out. People want to talk to you. If you think what we're doing is not okay, that's fine. that's absolutely fine. Just let's chat about it and see what we can do, because if you have a place on this planet, if you're invested in a livable planet, this is something we all need to talk about as well. If you're not able to come here, I think someone's just been arrested. That's why they've been taken away. But you don't need to be arrested to be part of this movement. Obviously, it's helpful, but there's place for everyone. Hopefully, we've got that across in this live stream. Whether you're in Glasgow, whether you're in London, whether you're in a little town in the middle of nowhere, there is something that you can do. There's online rebellion work as well. Go to the Extinction Rebellion website to find out more from that. Whether it's putting up a poster or sitting in a road, there's a lot that can be done. There should not be a place where we feel totally and utterly hopeless. As well as the people handing out flowers trying to talk to you today, there's also people from lots of different cultures and backgrounds and experiences of the climate crisis, for some of whom they're feeling it more acutely. I mentioned before, there's a group of Peruvian activists here today that would be fascinating to talk to. So if you're curious what the climate crisis looks like at a more acute level than perhaps what you're feeling right now, and you can't quite get to grips with it, there's loads of resources online that we can find out more from. And lots of people here, if you are in London, that will happily chat to you about it. So thank you so much for joining us. Please share this video if you can. There will be things you don't agree with in it. That's absolutely fine. It's not about us fighting with each other, but it is about having that conversation. So please just have it. Thanks very much. As I said, we're on Temple Avenue here in London, and see you on the streets.
For you, millions of people. From the Physical Society of London. Tell us a little bit about what you do and that sphere we have back there.
Hi, yes, the Physical Society research different kinds of green technologies like this fungal concrete.
And this is called what? Funcrete,
Funcrete, that's right, made of mycelium. Okay, so, but the truth is we're terrified, right? I'm a physicist, and like physicists, we see the catastrophe that is unfolding. New green technologies like this don't help at all unless you retire the old dirty technologies, right? And city firms are pouring billions of pounds into fossil fuels and other polluting industries, and the regulators of the City of London, including the new the mayor, are doing nothing to discourage that at all. We're here to just plead. We're here to plead with the new Lord Mayor to change the story. We've seen from the climate conference over the last couple of weeks that there is no substantial change in policy. We need a dramatic change, right? We love this city, right? We're the Physical Society of London, but we need something new, and changes now.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. Enjoy the rest of the parade.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
who are permanently occupied by Indonesia. Indonesia, country represented